The Hartwell brothers had always been drawn to forgotten places, the kind of locations that existed on outdated maps, marked with faded ink and crossed-out names. Marcus, the elder of the two at 38, possessed an engineer's mind and a collector's obsession with industrial antiquity. His younger brother, Daniel, 33, brought the business acumen and the willingness to take calculated risks that Marcus sometimes lacked. Together, they had spent the better part of a decade acquiring abandoned properties across the American West, searching for architectural salvage, antique machinery, and occasionally, if luck smiled upon them, precious metals or gemstones overlooked by previous owners. The mine they purchased in the late autumn of that year had been listed for sale by the county for back taxes, a collapsed operation that had been sealed and forgotten since the early 1920s. The auction notice described it simply as defunct mining property, structural fire damaged, buyer assumes all liability. The starting bid was set at $12,000, an amount that seemed almost insulting for what had once been a thriving gold extraction operation during the height of the Western mining boom. Marcus had discovered the listing quite by accident while researching mining operations in the Montana Territory. The property sat 40 miles outside of a town called Silverdale, itself barely more than a collection of weathered buildings and a post office that opened 3 days a week. Historical records indicated that the mine, originally called the Prometheus Deep, had been established in 1887 by a consortium of East Coast investors who had poured considerable capital into the operation. For nearly 3 decades, the mine had produced moderate yields of gold ore, employing at its peak over 200 miners and supporting much of the local economy. But here's something incredible that almost nobody knows about old Western mines, and if you're enjoying this story of hidden industrial treasures, make sure you hit that subscribe button and activate notifications so you never miss another tale of forgotten fortunes. And speaking of support, consider sending a super thanks to help us continue uncovering these amazing historical discoveries. Also, drop a comment right now telling us where in the world you're watching this from. We love hearing from our global community of treasure hunting enthusiasts. Now, back to what the Hartwell brothers were about to discover in the depths of that abandoned mine. The collapse that had sealed the Prometheus Deep occurred in March of 1924, triggered by a combination of structural instability and an underground water breach that flooded several of the lower shafts. 3 miners had died in the incident, and the company, already struggling with declining yields and increasing operational costs, had simply abandoned the property rather than invest in the extensive repairs and pumping operations that would have been required to make it viable again. Over the following decades, the surface buildings had been stripped of anything valuable by salvagers, and the mine entrance itself had been dynamited shut by the Bureau of Mines in 1958 as a safety measure. What made Marcus insist they pursue this particular property was a single sentence he had found in a mining journal from 1889. The article, discussing innovations in Western mining operations, mentioned that the Prometheus Deep had installed the largest underground hoist engine west of the Mississippi, a marvel of modern engineering capable of lifting 6 tons of ore per trip from depths exceeding 1,500 feet. Such machinery, Marcus knew, had been built to last centuries, constructed from materials and with craftsmanship that modern manufacturing rarely matched. If that engine still existed in the depths of the sealed mine, its value as industrial antiquity alone could be substantial. Daniel had been skeptical at first. The cost of excavating a collapsed mine, even just to access the upper levels, would be considerable. They would need to hire specialized contractors, obtain permits, ensure the tunnels were safe and properly ventilated, and deal with a mountain of legal liability issues. However, Marcus had done his research thoroughly. He presented Daniel with auction records from industrial salvage sales, showing that similar-era mining equipment had sold for anywhere from $50,000 to over $300,000, depending on condition and historical significance. A complete, functioning hoist engine from the 1880s, if they could extract it intact, could command a price at the upper end of that range or beyond. They attended the auction on a cold Tuesday morning in November. Only 4 other bidders appeared, most of them local ranchers interested in acquiring the surface land for grazing rights rather than anything to do with mining. The Hartwells won the property at $14,500, just $2,000 above the minimum bid. Within a week, they had finalized the paperwork and stood for the first time at the base of the rocky hillside where the Prometheus Deep had once operated. The site was far more desolate than the historical photographs had suggested. All the surface structures, the ore processing buildings, the workers' barracks, the administrative offices, had long since collapsed or been dismantled. Only concrete foundations remained, slowly being reclaimed by hardy mountain vegetation. The mine entrance itself was sealed behind tons of blasted rock and rubble, marked by a weathered warning sign that declared the area dangerous and prohibited to unauthorized personnel. Marcus spent the first 3 days surveying the site, using ground-penetrating radar equipment to map the underlying tunnel structure and identify the safest approach for excavation. The main shaft descended at a 20-degree angle for approximately 400 feet before leveling into a horizontal drift that connected to multiple branching tunnels. The hoist engine, according to the original mine plans he had obtained from the State Historical Society, would be located in a dedicated machine room approximately 300 feet into the mountain, positioned where the main shaft transitioned from the angled entry to the horizontal workings. They hired a small excavation company out of Helena, run by a man named Raymond Chen who specialized in mining reclamation projects. Raymond brought with him 2 experienced crew members, along with the heavy equipment necessary to safely remove the blasted rock sealing the entrance. The work proceeded slowly and carefully. The greatest danger in opening a long-sealed mine was the potential for bad air, pockets of carbon dioxide, methane, or simple oxygen depletion that could kill within minutes. They installed powerful ventilation fans and gas monitoring equipment before removing even a single stone from the entrance. The breakthrough came on the 11th day of excavation. The crew had removed enough rubble to reveal a narrow opening into the original mine tunnel. The passage beyond was dark and still, untouched by human presence in over a century. Marcus and Daniel, equipped with modern LED headlamps, respirators, and safety harnesses, were the first to venture inside. The tunnel was remarkably well preserved. The timber supports, though aged and requiring careful evaluation, remained structurally sound. The walls showed the characteristic pick marks and drill holes of 19th-century mining techniques, and occasionally they encountered sections where ore veins had been followed, creating irregular side cavities in the otherwise straight passage. The air, once the ventilation system had been running for several hours, tested clean and breathable, though they kept their respirators ready as a precaution. They moved deeper into the mountain, following the gradually descending tunnel. Water had clearly been present at some point. Mineral deposits stained the walls, and in places, the floor was covered with dried mud, but the flooding that had sealed the mine had apparently drained away naturally over the decades. After 280 feet of careful progress, their headlamps illuminated a large opening ahead, and they knew they had reached the machine room. The chamber that housed the hoist engine was approximately 60 feet long and 30 feet wide, carved directly from the solid rock of the mountain. And there, dominating the space like some slumbering mechanical deity, sat the engine. It was far larger than Marcus had dared hope. The main drive wheel stood nearly 12 feet in diameter, its rim thick enough that a grown man could not reach his arms around it. The wheel was connected to a complex system of gears, each one precision-cut and fitted, that transferred power to the massive drum around which the hoisting cable had once been wound. The drum itself was 8 feet across and 6 feet wide, built to hold thousands of feet of steel cable. Every component was constructed from materials chosen for permanence: cast iron, forged steel, bronze bearings, and brass fittings that still gleamed dully beneath a century of dust. The engine's base was bolted directly to the stone floor with anchor bolts as thick as a man's wrist. The flywheel, positioned opposite the main drive wheel, added another several tons to the assembly's total mass. Marcus estimated the entire engine weighed somewhere between 15 and 20 tons, though getting an exact figure would require detailed measurements and engineering calculations. What made the discovery truly remarkable was the engine's condition. Protected from the elements within the sealed mine, subject to relatively stable temperature and humidity, the machinery had experienced almost no deterioration. The metal surfaces showed surface oxidation but no significant corrosion. The gears were still properly aligned in their housings. The bronze bearings that allowed the various wheels and drums to rotate freely appeared intact. With proper cleaning, lubrication, and minor restoration work, Marcus believed the engine could actually be returned to functional condition. Daniel stood in silence for several minutes, his headlamp beams slowly traversing the mechanical marvel before them. He was mentally calculating costs, market value, extraction logistics, and buyer potential. This was not merely industrial salvage. This was a museum-quality piece of mining history, a tangible connection to the engineering achievements of the late 19th century. The manufacturer's plate, mounted prominently on the engine's frame, identified it as built by the Corliss Steam Engine Company of Providence, Rhode Island, in 1888. The Corliss Company had been renowned for producing the most advanced and efficient steam engines of their era, and their products were prized by industrial operations worldwide. An intact Corliss engine of this size and age, particularly one with such a specific and well-documented history, would be of interest to industrial museums, mining heritage organizations, and private collectors of mechanical antiquities. Over the following weeks, Marcus documented every aspect of the engine with meticulous care. He took hundreds of photographs from every angle, measured each component, researched the original specifications and performance characteristics, and compiled a comprehensive historical report that traced the engine's manufacture, shipment to Montana, installation in the Prometheus Deep, years of operation, and eventual abandonment. This documentation would be crucial in establishing the engine's provenance and maximizing its value to potential buyers. The question of extraction presented significant challenges. The engine had been installed in the machine room by bringing individual components into the mine and assembling them in place. The main drive wheel alone, weighing approximately 3 tons, would have been transported in sections and assembled on site. To remove the engine intact, they would need to reverse this process, carefully disassembling the machinery into components that could be moved through the relatively narrow mine tunnel and then transported to the surface. They hired a specialized industrial moving company from Colorado that had experience relocating historic machinery. The crew arrived with custom-built cradles, hydraulic jacks, precision cutting tools, and a detailed plan for disassembly that would ensure every component could later be reassembled to factory specifications. The work required 3 months of careful effort. Each bolt had to be documented before removal. Each gear and bearing had to be protected from damage. Each component had to be tagged and catalogued to ensure proper reassembly would be possible. The main drive wheel proved the most challenging element. Even disassembled into sections, each piece weighed hundreds of pounds and had to be maneuvered through the mine tunnel on custom-built skids. A temporary rail system was installed to allow the heavy components to be dragged to the entrance, where a crane could lift them to the surface. The entire operation required precision, patience, and absolute attention to safety. By early spring, the last component of the Corliss engine emerged from the Prometheus Deep and was loaded onto specialized transportation trucks. The Hartwell brothers had the entire engine moved to a climate-controlled warehouse in Helena, where it was cleaned, photographed professionally, and prepared for sale. Marcus had been in contact with several potential buyers throughout the extraction process. The Smithsonian Institution expressed interest but indicated that their acquisition budget for industrial artifacts was limited. A mining museum in Colorado submitted a preliminary offer of $75,000 for the engine, which Daniel considered far below its actual value. A private collector in California, who owned one of the most extensive collections of 19th-century industrial machinery in North America, requested detailed specifications and proposed flying to Montana to inspect the engine in person. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A representative from a large industrial heritage park in Germany contacted them after seeing Marcus's documentation online. The park specialized in preserving and displaying working examples of 19th-century technology, and they had been searching for a large American mining hoist engine to complete an exhibit on international mining history. They were particularly interested in the Corliss engine because they already owned several other Corliss-manufactured machines and could create a comprehensive display showing the company's range of products and applications. The negotiations proceeded over several months. The German organization brought in their own engineering consultants to assess the engine's condition and authenticity. They reviewed Marcus's historical research and confirmed the engine's significance and rarity. Their final offer was $340,000, with the organization assuming all costs for international shipping, import duties, and any necessary restoration work once the engine reached Germany. Daniel pushed for more, believing they could potentially achieve $400,000 or higher with additional time and marketing. However, Marcus argued for accepting the offer. The German Heritage Park would ensure the engine was properly preserved, displayed, and maintained. It would be seen by hundreds of thousands of visitors each year and serve an educational purpose that aligned with Marcus's own passion for industrial history. The monetary return, while important, was not the only consideration. They accepted the offer. The paperwork alone required 6 weeks to complete, involving lawyers, international trade specialists, and cultural heritage export approvals. The actual transportation of the engine to Germany required specialized shipping containers and careful coordination to ensure nothing was damaged during the journey across the Atlantic. The final payment cleared into their account on a warm afternoon in August. After deducting their initial investment in purchasing the mine, the excavation costs, the extraction expenses, documentation and professional photography, legal fees, and various other costs, the Hartwell brothers' net profit from the coreless engine came to just over $215,000, a substantial return on their $14,500 gamble. But the engine was not the only treasure the Prometheus Deep yielded. While extracting the coreless machinery, they had discovered that several of the mine's side tunnels contained abandoned mining equipment, ore cars, hand tools, blasting equipment, even a complete blacksmith's forge that had been used for on-site tool repair and maintenance. Much of this equipment, while not as valuable as the engine, found ready buyers among collectors, museums, and industrial salvage dealers. An additional $47,000 in sales came from these supplementary items. More significantly, Marcus's careful documentation of the mine's history and their recovery operation attracted attention from mining historians and industrial archaeology organizations. They were invited to present their findings at a conference on Western mining heritage, which led to consulting opportunities with other property owners interested in assessing abandoned mines for historical and salvage potential. What had begun as a single speculative purchase evolved into a profitable specialty niche in the industrial salvage market. The Prometheus Deep itself, stripped of its valuable machinery but newly accessible and properly ventilated, attracted interest from a mining education organization that wanted to use the upper tunnels as a training site for mining engineering students. The Hartwells sold the property for $22,000, recovering their initial investment and adding to their overall profit from the venture. Years later, Marcus would receive periodic updates from the German Heritage Park. The coreless engine had been meticulously restored to working condition, not operating under actual load, but capable of being run at low power for demonstration purposes. It had become one of the park's most popular exhibits, featured in educational videos and documentaries about 19th-century industrial technology. Thousands of engineering students and history enthusiasts visited the display each year, learning about the remarkable machinery that had once powered the extraction of gold from deep beneath a Montana mountain. The story of the Hartwell brothers and the Prometheus Deep stands as a testament to the hidden treasures that lie forgotten in America's industrial past, fortunes that await not in gold or silver, but in the magnificent machinery that once extracted them. And if this tale of forgotten engineering marvels and calculated risks has captured your imagination, then this is absolutely the moment to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we have countless more stories of incredible discoveries and hidden fortunes waiting to be shared. Consider sending a super thanks to support our work in bringing these remarkable historical tales to light. Your support directly helps us research and produce these in-depth stories. And before you go, drop a comment telling us what country or state you're watching from. We have viewers from all over the world, and we'd love to hear where this story has reached today. The Hartwell brothers found their fortune in rust and iron, in gears and bearings, in the mechanical genius of a bygone era. Sometimes the greatest treasures are not what we expect to find, but what we're willing to recognize when we discover them. Until the next story of forgotten fortunes and incredible discoveries, keep searching, keep believing, and remember that history's greatest treasures often lie just beneath the surface, waiting for someone with a vision to recognize their true value.